Good evening from Washington. I'm Laura Ingraham, and this is the Ingraham Angle, and we have breaking news tonight. The Washington Post is now reporting that former FBI Director Andrew McCabe has been fired. Yes, the embattled former FBI director is, we know what happened with him. We know that his wife, obviously, was running for state representative, got help from Terry McAuliffe. Of course, his PAC donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to her campaign. It was not revealed at the time, and that raised a huge problem. And he's been embattled now for, several months. A lot of us thought he would have been fired a long time ago. Remember, his pension, he would have kicked in his pension on Sunday. Yet, if he's fired today, looks like that pension will not kick in. San Francisco attorney Harmeet Dillon, who's also the national committee woman for the Republican National Committee for California, is with us now. Harmeet, breaking news tonight. This really should have happened a long time ago. I don't know why they wait until 2 days before he would retire and his pension would kick in. But nevertheless, this is the news tonight. Your reaction?
Well, I agree with you, Laura. I think this should have been done a while back, and the FBI Director Wray has already taken steps to remove McCabe from any positions of authority. But I guess the triggering event here is the Office of Professional Responsibility investigation and recommendation, and I guess the Attorney General did not want to act until he had that recommendation in hand and make the decision himself. So I'm glad this action has been taken. Clearly, Mr. McCabe was at the heart of a number of troubling controversies at the FBI, starting before the election and then continuing through today. So maybe this is the beginning of some reckoning happening at the FBI with this head rolling. And of course, there are others, Lisa Page, Peter Strzok, and others who are involved in these.
Yeah, and we have the Peter Strzok news. Yeah, we have this Peter Strzok news that we're also going to get to, his relationship with the judge who has since recused himself. Let's go to Alan Dershowitz. Professor Dershowitz, this just broke minutes ago. The Washington Post, McCabe is out. Your reaction?
Well, I want to see the evidence. If the evidence conclusively demonstrates that he was less than candid and misled investigators, then the firing seems justified. But I think you have to have a fairly high threshold to fire somebody on the eve of his retirement and take away a pension that he's earned over a long, long period of time.
20 years.
Of pretty good service. So, yeah, I want to see this. I want to see the evidence. If the evidence justifies it, fine. As far as Strzok is concerned, that seems to be an open and shut case for firing.
Yeah, we're going to get to Strzok. Yeah, let's get to Strzok in a minute. Let's hold that separately because that's a separate issue involving the judge in the case, which, again, this comes out today after investigative reporter Sarah Carter breaks this story. Which, it's like we keep saying every day, it can't get worse, but it keeps getting worse. Joining us now, and we're delighted she's with us, is Sarah Carter, who broke the story about Peter Strzok's friendship with the judge in the case. Sarah, we were talking just a few minutes ago in the hallway. You said keep your eye out for the McCabe firing. It could happen. You have good sources in justice because it did happen. Tell us what led to this happening 2 days before he would have gotten his pension. It seems a little odd that it would be happening this late. Why did it take this long for the Office of Professional Responsibility to come to this decision?
Okay, the Office of Professional Responsibility, OPR, did come to the decision that they wanted him fired after Michael Horowitz uncovered a lot of information on Andrew McCabe.
The Inspector General.
Exactly, the Inspector General at the DOJ. And that was then referred to OPR. And I think there's a lot of extenuating circumstances here. I don't think we've heard everything. I think there's a lot more than just misleading the IG and the FBI and also leaks, which is what has been reported, right? So we only know a little bit.
Give us the 2 or 3 things that are the most egregious that have been out there that called into question his professionalism in handling his job.
Oh, I think certainly the leaking to the media, number one.
Yep.
Also, the fact that he lied. He basically lied to the FBI, to his own employers, and to the IG. And I think that about his relationship, actually, and his friendships with Strzok, about what was happening with the Hillary Clinton email investigation. And remember, he gave that information to the Wall Street Journal. Apparently, he authorized that. And when they broke that story, and then he went back and the IG said, hey, were you responsible for authorizing these leaks? He said no. That's according to sources that I've spoken with. But I think this goes far beyond that. I think they're also looking at possible criminal charges. And that could be very serious.
Wow. Alan Dershowitz and Harmeet. Let's go to Harmeet first. Criminal charges against Andrew McCabe. This is the second time I've heard this today. The earlier time was about 2 o'clock in the afternoon from one of my sources in the Justice Department today that said, you all know just a little bit of what's gone on with Andrew McCabe. Again, 20-year veteran of the department, very well respected for years. And yet, apparently, we don't know what the OPR knows and what the Inspector General knows. We'll be finding out in the coming days. Harmeet.
Yes, I would have to agree with Sarah. It seems hard to believe that he would get fired for simply the leaking, although the leaking is obviously very egregious. The Wall Street Journal story that came out that was the product of those leaks was, clearly attempted to paint his role in a different light than was true, and a lot of other politicking going on in that story. So that was pretty shocking. But this seems like turnabout is fair play in a way. We all know, we've seen the stories about how, General Flynn has been indicted and asked to plead guilty on charges of a lie to the FBI. And where you have the FBI, number 3 in command and temporarily number 1 in command, lying himself to other FBI agents, it seems appropriate to hold them to the same standard.
Professor Dershowitz, again, this is wild. On a Friday night, 2 days before a man who's served the government for decades and was very well respected before the Hillary email investigation, I think, took place, to be fired in this way. I have to take Sarah and her reporting to heart here. I don't think they would risk firing him were it not for some fairly serious information that has come to light and that will be reported by the IG.
That sounds right to me. This afternoon, I was saying that I think there has to be a high burden before you fire somebody who's performed in a distinguished way for 20 years. But I have a lot of experience with the OPR, the Office of Professional Responsibility. They don't generally go after their own. They generally whitewash their own. And when the OPR comes to this conclusion, you really have to give it some credibility. I still want to see the evidence, but I bet you we'll see evidence that's far more compelling than what we've heard about up to now. And when they're talking about criminal charges, that sounds very, very serious. It's distressing because I had a lot of respect for McCabe based on what people who've worked in the FBI have told me over the years. But you can't have a double standard. You have to have the same standard for Democrat, for Republican, for people who've been in the FBI, and for civilians. And if that standard has been met for criminal prosecution and for firing, so be it.
And folks, we just got the Attorney General's statement, which I'm going to read. He writes, the FBI expects every employee to adhere to the highest standards of honesty, integrity, and accountability. As the OPR proposal stated, all FBI employees know that lacking candor under oath results in dismissal, and that our integrity is our brand. Pursuant to Department Order 1202, and based on the report of the Inspector General, the findings of the FBI Office of Professional Responsibility, and the recommendation of the department's senior career official, I have terminated the employment of Andrew McCabe effective immediately. He goes on to say, the FBI expects every employee to adhere to the highest standards of honesty, integrity, and accountability. And then he went on to say both the Office of Inspector General and the OPR reports concluded that McCabe had made an unauthorized disclosure to the news media, Sarah said, and lacked candor under oath on multiple occasions. So this seems, in the way it's worded, this seems like an open and shut case. You cannot make exceptions even for someone with a very distinguished career as a civil servant, as a career professional. You know, people make mistakes for a variety of reasons, or people do things for a variety of reasons. I'm not going to try to get into his head. But I do not think the Office of Professional Responsibility and Sessions, with all of the media spotlight on them, would take this action were it not very serious. Sarah, you've been reporting on the Peter Strzok issue, which is another issue we have to talk to you about. His relationship with the presiding Judge Contreras in the case, when you published this today, I was reading this going, this can't be happening. Explain to our viewers what happened.
Well, it was stunning. What we discovered was through these text messages, and actually it was the House Oversight Committee, their due diligence.
Yep.
I mean, they had sent people over and over again to the DOJ, and they finally pieced together what was redacted, what was handed to them. So they got to see semi-redacted documents that showed that Peter Strzok had a very close friendship with Judge Contreras. This
not
is
revealed.
Not revealed.
Disclosed.
Not disclosed. The DOJ did not disclose this. So, I mean, remember, we were all left wondering, why did he recuse himself? So, on December 1st, 2017, you know, Michael Flynn goes before the judge. He pleads guilty. That's Judge Contreras. On the 7th of December, 2017, Judge Contreras recuses himself. But now we know that he and Peter Strzok for a long time had been friends. And he also sat, you know, on the
crazy.
He also sat on the FISC court. And Peter Strzok,
FISA, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So he was in the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court. He took care of the FISA applications. And Peter Strzok, who was in charge of counterintelligence and Russia, would go to the FISA court for these warrants to be signed.
And presumably
yeah. So what's really interesting, Laura, is inside those...
Hold on, Alan will get to you in 1 second.
Inside those text messages, he specifically states
with Page.
Yeah, if you see them, he specifically knows that if he continues this relationship, it could present.
Here's what he
problem.
says. This is Peter Strzok's text, and Alan, you can react. He, Contreras, super thoughtful and rigorous about ethics and conflicts, suggested a social setting with others would probably be better than a one-on-one meeting. I'm sorry, I was just going to have to invite you to a cocktail party. Yeah. Of course you'll be there. Have to come up with some other work people cover for action. Odd. And then it goes on, and there's other things as well. But Professor Dershowitz, that's wild.
That's the smoking gun. The smoking gun is the attempt to meet with him surreptitiously with a cover so that nobody will be able to say that they met in a way that required recusal. This guy Strzok seems like he is really a piece of work. You know, he should have recused himself initially from any involvement in this case because of the messages he sent. Mueller didn't know about these messages. Mueller didn't act improperly. He didn't know about the messages. As soon as he found out about the messages, he took them off the case. But Strzok knew that he had sent these messages, and he should have recused himself. He should be fired. He violated every possible rule of ethics in the FBI, and I think he has to go. I'm surprised he hasn't been fired up until now.
Alan and Harmeet, he uses the phrase, with some other work people cover
right,
for action.
There's the term cover, right. Laura. There's the term
I mean, that's
recusal.
The smoking gun.
Cover, Harmeet.
If there isn't cover. No, I mean, and this type of ex parte communication is outrageous. And if this isn't a conspiracy, I don't know what is. You have multiple people, and there's a conversation there in the text messages about a dinner party for 6. So you have multiple people who are around Strzok and Page conspiring to somehow set up a conversation with the judge. I think it's outrageous, and in any federal court, a court should recuse himself. And we don't know why the judge recused himself.
How stupid can he be, putting everything in writing, everything in
knowing
in emails, everything in messages.
He's a counterintelligence. This guy is supposed to be the best.
This is an unintelligent counterintelligence guy.
Okay, we got a McCabe statement. God, everything happens on Friday night. This is why we're happy we're live. Okay, Friday night, this is McCabe's statement. For the last year and a half, my family and I have been targets of an unrelenting assault on our reputation. In my service to this country, and my service, the articles too numerous to count, have leveled every sort of false, defamatory, and degrading allegation against us. The president's tweets have amplified and exacerbated it all. He called for my firing. He called for me to be stripped of my pension after more than 20 years of service. And all along, we have said nothing, never wanting to distract from the mission of the FBI by addressing the lies told and repeated about us. And that's a pretty clear statement. I mean, he thinks it's all unfair. It's a total witch hunt. Sarah, I'll let you close it.
Well, here's my question. How can he say that when it's his FBI? It's not the president. It's not the DOJ. It's OPR that is asking for him to be fired.
Office of Professional Responsibility, which is staffed with career professionals. FBI, judging.
That's right.
Andrew McCabe, top of the FBI.
And he had a lot of friends in OPR. So that should tell you something.
Alan, again, his statement is defiant, Alan.
It is, but if he thought people were after him, then he should have been so careful about how he responded. And yet, if people were after them, he gave them the ammunition by not being responsive, by being deceptive, by being untruthful. So he opened the door to allowing the OPR to make the kinds of conclusions that they came to. It sounds to me like he doesn't have much of a leg to stand on. I'm sympathetic to him, but it seems to me he's made his own bed.
And Laura, he's 49. He'll be just fine. We've seen lots of people in the swamp do just fine without their pensions at the age of 49 in Washington, D.C. You note that in his statement he doesn't deny the charges that the OPR leveled against him, and I think that's very telling as well.